I have been on the bench long enough to know that people do not walk into court carrying only the charges written on the paper. They bring grief, panic, pressure, and sometimes the kind of pain that changes the entire room before they even speak. Most days, what comes through my courtroom is ordinary. Parking tickets, traffic violations, expired registrations, excuses dressed up as explanations. But every once in a while, someone stands in front of me carrying something much heavier than a fine schedule can measure. That is exactly what happened the morning Michael Chen walked into my courtroom. He was 20 years old, a student, and before he said one word, I could see he was barely keeping himself together. His shirt was wrinkled, his face was pale, and his eyes had that swollen, sleepless look grief leaves on young people who have not yet learned how to hide it. The clerk handed me the file. 3 parking tickets near Rhode Island Hospital, 1 unpaid registration renewal. With late fees, a little over $400. I asked him what happened. He took a breath and told me he had been parking near the hospital because his father was in intensive care, stage 4, pancreatic cancer. He said he knew the parking was illegal. He said he knew he should have handled the tickets sooner. But every day was hospital, school, home, and back again. No sleep, no focus, no sense of time. So I asked him how his father was doing now. Michael looked straight at me and said, "He died 2 weeks ago." The courtroom went quiet. I asked when the funeral had been. He said the previous Friday. I asked how old he was. 20 years old, and standing in court trying to explain parking tickets while carrying the shock of burying his father. I asked him to tell me about his father. He said his father came to this country from China at 18, worked in restaurants for years, saved enough to open a small takeout place called Golden Dragon, and then spent his life working brutal hours so Michael and his mother could have a better one. Michael told me he was pre-med. He wanted to become a doctor because of the compassion shown to his father in the hospital. This was not a kid trying to manipulate a judge with tears. This was a grieving son, still trying to become someone useful. Now, let me be clear. A courtroom is not group therapy. Tears are not a legal defense. People perform in court every day. I know the difference between theater and pain. Michael Chen was not performing. He was exhausted, grieving, and trying not to come apart in public. I looked at the dates on the tickets again. December 15th, December 22nd, January 5th, exactly the weeks when he was watching his father slip away. By the letter of the law, yes, the tickets were valid, fine. But judges are not paid to be cash registers. We are paid to exercise judgment. Why do parking rules exist? Safety, access, order, good. But if a judge cannot tell the difference between an entitled driver ignoring signs for convenience and a son trying to get to his father's bedside, then that judge has no business wearing a robe. So I told him the truth. I said, "You were not joyriding. You were not trying to cheat the system. You were trying to be where a son is supposed to be when his father is dying." Then I dismissed every ticket, not reduced, not delayed, dismissed. For a second, he just stared at me. Then the tears came, real tears, the kind that arrive when somebody has been bracing for another official blow, and instead, here's mercy. I stepped down from the bench and hugged him. I told him his father would be proud of him. I told him to become the doctor he wanted to be. The entire courtroom stood up. Every person in that room. My clerk was crying. The court officer was wiping his eyes. Michael turned, saw all those strangers standing with him in that moment, and understood that his grief had been recognized. Not pitied, recognized. A few weeks later, he came back to see me. He looked steadier and more present. He brought a white box from his family's restaurant. His mother had made his father's special dumplings and wanted me to have some. That nearly undid me. Here was a family shattered by loss, still finding a way to be generous. He told me something had changed after that day in court. He had been failing classes, angry, unable to focus. But that one moment of mercy reminded him there were still decent people in the world. He got his grades back up. He stayed in school. Later, he wrote to tell me he had volunteered in the oncology ward where his father died, helping families going through what his own family had just endured. Then he wrote again to say he had been accepted to medical school on a full scholarship. Years later, I learned that Dr. Michael Chen had opened a free clinic for underserved immigrant families and named it after his father's restaurant, Golden Dragon. That is why judgment matters. One moment of mercy in a courtroom does not always end there. Sometimes it moves outward. Sometimes it becomes part of the way someone else treats the world. So no, I did not dismiss those tickets because I was being soft. I dismissed them because I was being just. Rules matter. But rules serve people. People do not exist to serve rules. Michael Chen did not need punishment. He needed room to grieve without being invoiced for it. That is what I gave him. And I would do it again tomorrow. Because the law is supposed to have a spine, yes, but it is also supposed to have a brain. And on that morning, the brain knew exactly what justice required.